The deafening sound of tearing metal echoed through the horizon as Commander Alex Rivera fought with the failing controls. The uncharted spatial anomaly had appeared out of nowhere, shredding the survey vessel's quantum drive like tissue paper. Klaxons blared as life support systems flickered, the ship's AI coolly announcing remaining oxygen levels in hours rather than days. With no choice left, Rivera guided the crippled vessel toward the azure crescent of Proxima Centauri, a world marked simply as uninhabited but hospitable in preliminary surveys. The landing, if one could call the controlled crash that left the horizon wedged between massive purple-leafed trees with its hull breached in multiple sections. Damage assessment complete, the ship's computer announced, its voice unnervingly calm. Quantum drive, non-functional. Communication array, non-functional. Life support, operating at 37% capacity. Rivera wiped blood from a gash on his forehead and studied the readouts. He had survived, but for what? The nearest human outpost was 4 light-years away. Without the quantum drive, he might as well be stranded in another galaxy. Calculate survival probability based on remaining supplies, he commanded. Calculating. Food stores will last approximately 8 standard months. Potable water can be recycled for 14 months. Without repairs to the oxygen recycler, breathable air will deplete in 63 days. Rivera gathered what functional equipment remained and stepped out through the buckled airlock. The atmosphere was breathable, just barely, with a slightly higher oxygen content than Earth's. The gravity felt heavier, making each step an effort. Violet foliage stretched in every direction, rustling in winds that carried strange, spicy scents. Using a portable scanner, Rivera began assessing the exterior damage. The quantum drive housing had been completely ruptured, its delicate components scattered across half a kilometer of impact trail. Critical field stabilizers were shattered beyond repair. Even if he had replacement parts, the precision calibration required specialized equipment available only at major space docks. 63 days, he muttered, calculating how to stretch his survival. Perhaps he could locate mineral deposits to patch the hull, find edible native flora to supplement his rations. But ultimately he was merely postponing the inevitable. Footsteps crunched on the violet soil behind him. Rivera whirled around, hand flying to his sidearm. A tall, slender figure stood watching him from the edge of the forest clearing. Her skin was iridescent blue, catching the light of Proxima Centauri and reflecting it in subtle patterns. Most startling were her eyes, large, almond-shaped, and shifting from amber to emerald as she tilted her head studying him. "Your vessel is critically damaged," she said in perfect English, her voice melodic yet somehow mechanical. "The quantum field regulator has experienced catastrophic desynchronization." Rivera kept his hand on his weapon. "How do you know our language?" "The surveys marked this planet as uninhabited." "Your species has visited this region before," she replied, taking a step closer. Strange patterns on her skin glowed softly as she moved. "We observed. We learned." Rivera scanned the tree line, but saw no others. "My people prefer to remain hidden from outsiders." She gestured toward the ship's mangled drive section. "Your propulsion matrix has collapsed. The quantum field regulator is beyond your species' ability to repair without proper facilities." She stepped closer, close enough that Rivera could see intricate patterns etched into her skin that seemed almost like circuitry. "I can fix it," she said simply, "but I require something in exchange." Rivera's survival training warmed caution, but hope, dangerous, irrational hope, flared within him. "Who are you?" "I am called Zelara," she said, her eyes shifting to a deep sapphire blue. "And I believe, Commander Rivera, that we can help each other." Rivera stood motionless, survival training warring with shock as Zelara explained her proposition. The alien's slender fingers danced through the air, manipulating an invisible interface. A moment later, a holographic projection materialized between them. "This is what I seek," she said. The image showed a crystalline sphere, no larger than a human fist. Its surface was etched with swirling patterns that seemed to move when Rivera wasn't looking directly at them. The object radiated a soft blue glow, pulsing like a heartbeat. "The Mnemosyne key," Zelara continued, her voice taking on a reverent quality. "It contains the collected knowledge and memories of my people spanning 50,000 years. A data storage device." Rivera asked, professional curiosity momentarily overriding his suspicion. "It is more than simple data," Zelara corrected. "It is living memory, continuously updated through a quantum entanglement network. Every significant experience, every technological breakthrough, every historical event, all preserved within its crystalline matrix." Rivera circled the hologram, studying it from all angles. "And you need this why? Why not just make another one?" Zelara's skin darkened to a deeper blue. The Vraxian Collective took it during the last eclipse cycle. Without it, my people lose portions of our collective memory daily. Already, children are born who cannot access the ancestral knowledge of their bloodlines. Who are these Vraxians? The hologram shifted, displaying tall, insectoid creatures with compound eyes and articulated exoskeletons. They maintain a trading outpost on the far side of this world. They consider themselves peacekeepers of this sector, confiscating technologies they deem potentially destabilizing. The projection changed again, showing a massive structure built into a mountainside. Energy barriers and automated defense systems surrounded it, patrolled by armored Vraxians. "This is where they keep the key," Zelara said. "Their security systems prevent my people from approaching. The barriers are calibrated specifically against our biological signatures." Rivera's military experience prickled with interest as he studied the defenses. They were advanced, certainly, but followed recognizable patterns. He recognized layered perimeter security, overlapping fields of fire, sensor grids, all principles that human special forces had evolved specifically to counter during the resource wars. "Your species adapts to obstacles in ways mine cannot comprehend," Zelara added, her eyes now scanning the makeshift repairs Rivera had already improvised on his damaged ship. The Vraxians would never expect a human approach. Rivera weighed his options. He had no way to verify Zelara's story. For all he knew, this was some elaborate trap. Yet he had no realistic alternative. Without repairs to the quantum drive, he would die on this planet, alone and forgotten. "What exactly would you need me to do?" he asked cautiously. "Infiltrate their facility. Retrieve the key. Return it to me." Zelara's eyes shifted to a determined amber. "In exchange, I will repair your vessel to full functionality." "Just like that? You have the technology to fix a quantum drive." "My people's technology is different from yours. But yes, I can repair it." Rivera studied her face, searching for signs of deception. "If this place is so heavily guarded, what makes you think I can get in and out alive?" "Because humans are unpredictable. Vraxians rely on calculated probabilities and patterns. Your species excels at defying both." Zelara extended her hand in a gesture that seemed oddly human. "Do we have an agreement, Commander?" River looked back at his crippled ship, then to the alien woman. 63 days of oxygen, certain death, or a dangerous gamble. "Show me exactly what we're up against," he finally said. "I need to know everything about this facility before I agree to anything." Zalara's lips curved in what might have been a smile. A wise precaution. "Come, we have much to discuss." The journey through the dense violet forest revealed inconsistencies in Zalara's story that Rivera couldn't ignore. Their path took them through valleys and ravines that seemed deliberately chosen to avoid open terrain. Twice they passed what appeared to be natural rock formations, but Rivera's scanner detected massive power signatures beneath them. Another question, Rivera said as they rested beside a stream of iridescent water. "If this planet is your homeworld, where are your cities, your infrastructure?" Zalara hesitated before responding. "We live beneath the surface. After the first contact with the Vraxians generations ago, we found it safer to remain hidden." "Safer? I thought they arrived recently." "The current outpost is recent. Their presence in this system is not." As they climbed a ridge overlooking a vast plain, Rivera's scanner pinged again. He casually adjusted settings while Zalara was distracted, revealing what appeared to be a massive underground complex, far too large for a simple outpost. "These readings suggest thousands of life forms below us," Rivera said, watching her reaction carefully. Zalara's skin darkened to a deeper blue. Abandoned settlement nodes, nothing more. Later, when a magnetic storm forced them to seek shelter in a cave system, Rivera made another discovery. Running his hand along the wall, he felt unusual textures beneath a layer of mineral deposits. Scratching away, the surface revealed intricate carvings, scenes depicting tall, blue-skinned figures wielding what appeared to be weapons against fleeing insectoid creatures. "Abandoned outposts, you said?" Rivera challenged, pointing to the carvings. "These look like Lumini using weapons against Vraxians." Zalara stared at the carvings, her expression unreadable. "You're more observant than I anticipated, Commander. I'm beginning to think this isn't about recovering stolen cultural heritage." The alien's eyes shifted to a deep, stormy blue. "The Memosine key is more than memory," she admitted, her voice hardening. "It controls orbital platforms our ancestors built for protection, platforms the Vraxians now call prohibited weapons technology." "Weapons," Rivera repeated flatly. "You want me to help you recover a weapon?" "A defense system," Zalara corrected. "The Vraxians claim to be peacekeepers, but they are conquerors who hide behind noble principles. They've appointed themselves galactic arbiters, confiscating technologies they deem too dangerous while building armaments of their own." Rivera studied her, recognizing the familiar cadence of half-truths mixed with propaganda. He'd heard similar justifications from extremist factions during Earth's resource wars. "They keep us imprisoned on our own world, while they decide our fate." Zalara continued, a hint of genuine anguish in her voice. "Without the key, we cannot access the defensive systems that would guarantee our freedom." "So you lied to me." I simplified. Her eyes met his directly. "Would you have helped if I told you the complete truth? That we are locked in a cold war with a species that claims moral superiority while practicing technological apartheid." Rivera fell silent, processing this new information. Something in her anger felt genuine, even if her story was incomplete. "The storm has passed," he said finally, gathering his equipment. "How much farther to the Vraxian outpost?" "We'll reach the perimeter by tomorrow's dawn," Zalara replied, studying his face. "Does this mean you're still helping me?" Rivera shouldered his pack. "I'm still helping you get inside. But I'll judge the truth for myself once I see this key. If you've missiled me about its purpose, our deal is void." Zalara nodded slowly. "Fair terms, Commander." As they continued their journey, Rivera couldn't shake the feeling that both sides in this conflict were hiding crucial information, and that he was walking into something far more complex than a simple heist. The Vraxian outpost rose from the plains like a metallic mountain, its surface rippling with energy fields that distorted the very air around it. Rivera and Zalara crouched behind a ridge of crystalline rock formations, studying the facility through his tactical visor. 7 guard rotations, overlapping sensor grids, and atmospheric anomaly detectors. Rivera muttered, making mental notes. But something's not right. Zalara turned to him. What do you mean? Those aren't military formations, he whispered, noting how the guards moved in predictable academic patterns. They're researchers, not soldiers. They patrol the same routes, same intervals. No randomization, no counter-surveillance protocols. Does this change your approach? Rivera nodded. Security looks impressive, but has exploitable patterns. They rely too heavily on technology rather than tactical awareness. He pointed to a shimmer in the air near the eastern perimeter. That's our way in. The sensor grid has a modulation cycle, creates a 2-second blind spot every 14 minutes. Zalara's eyes widened. How can you possibly see that? I can't see it, but I can see how the local wildlife avoids crossing that line except at specific intervals. Rivera checked his equipment one last time. Earth's special forces developed techniques specifically for penetrating automated security systems during the resource wars. Follow my lead, move exactly as I do. They waited for nightfall, when Proxima Centauri's red light dimmed to a deep crimson glow. Rivera led them through a complex approach pattern, timing their movements to coincide with the security system's modulation cycles. 3 times they froze in place as patrol drones hummed overhead, their sensors sweeping the terrain. Now, Rivera whispered at precisely the right moment, sprinting across the perimeter line. Inside, the outpost revealed itself as something very different from the militarized fortress Zalara had described. Vast chambers housed artifacts from dozens of species, displayed in specialized containment fields with detailed informational projections. This isn't a military installation, Rivera whispered as they navigated the shadowed corridors. It's a museum. Zalara remained silent, her skin tone shifting to a darker shade. Following the facility's layout that Zalara had provided, they made their way to the central chamber. The Mnemosyne key occupied a position of prominence, floating in a column of azure light. Unlike the other artifacts, its containment field was substantially reinforced. Rivera approached cautiously, reading the display plaque. The Forgotten Light, Class X Extinction Technology. Recovered from Lumini Ascendancy Outpost during Containment Operation 3429. Extinction Technology. Rivera turned to Zalara. You said it was a defense system. Before she could respond, a calm voice spoke from behind them. I wouldn't touch that, human. Rivera spun around. A tall, avian creature with iridescent feathers and 4 arms stepped from the shadows, flanked by floating security drones. Despite the tension of the moment, Rivera noted that the being wore the robes of a scholar, not the armor of a soldier. I am Chief Archivist Morix, the Vraxian said, his voice translated into perfect English. And that object has a body count higher than the population of your home planet. The Archivist's compound eyes studied Rivera with curious intensity. You are the first human we have encountered in this sector. How unfortunate that it should be under these circumstances. Morix gestured towards Zalara. I see the Ascendancy has found a new proxy for their retrieval attempts. Perhaps you'd like to hear what that artifact truly does before your companion convinces you to start an interstellar war. Rivera glanced between the Vraxian and Zalara, whose expression had hardened into something unreadable. "I'm listening," he said. The evidence Morix presented was damning. Hovering between them, holographic recordings showed blue-skinned figures, unmistakably Lumini, using smaller versions of the key to devastating effect against rival clans. Cities crumbled as strange energies warped reality around them. Entire land masses fractured and sank beneath boiling oceans. The Mnemosyne key doesn't just contain memories, Morix explained, his feathers rippling with concern. It's the control node for a network of stellar converters built to collapse enemy suns. Rivera watched the recordings, his face impassive despite the horror they displayed. "When did this happen?" 300 cycles ago, Morix replied. The Lumini Ascendancy, Zalara's faction, used prototype versions during their civil war. We intervened only after they destroyed their own moon, killing millions of their own kind. Rivera turned to Zalara. "Is this true?" Her skin had darkened to midnight blue, almost black. The recordings are authentic, but incomplete. They show only the final phase of a conflict the moderates forced upon us. We used the weapons in desperation, after our colonies were blockaded and starved. Morix activated another recording. This is what the Ascendancy attempted 18 cycles ago, before we secured the Master Key. The hologram showed a massive orbital platform directing a beam toward a nearby star, causing its surface to ripple and darken. A controlled stellar collapse, Morix continued. Had they succeeded, 3 inhabited systems would have been destroyed, including this one. Yet Rivera noticed something else as he studied the historical data scrolling alongside the recordings. The Vraxian quarantine protocols had systematically isolated and weakened the moderate Lumini factions while inadvertently strengthening extremist elements. "Your interventions created unintended consequences," Rivera observed. "Your conservation protocols drove the moderate Lumini factions to extinction, leaving only extremists with legitimate grievances about their containment." Morix's compound eyes blinked in what might have been surprise. "An insightful observation for a species at your development stage." "Your quarantine created the very radicals you feared," Rivera pressed, watching Zalara's expression shift between shame and defiance. "You removed their agency while claiming to protect them from themselves." The human's mind raced through the tactical situation, assessing options neither alien had considered. He circled the key slowly, studying its intricate crystal structure. "The key's biolocks require Luminidina to access weapon controls," he said thoughtfully. "What would happen if it encountered human genetic material? A species it doesn't recognize." Morix's translator struggled to convey his confusion. Impossible. The system only recognizes specific genetic signatures from authorized Lumini bloodlines. Any other interaction would trigger security protocols that. Rivera was already moving, pressing his palm against the containment field. The security system hesitated, recognizing neither friend nor foe in his Dina. That millisecond of uncertainty was enough for him to slip his hand through the field boundary. The key flared to life at his touch, its surface patterns realigning in complex fractal arrangements. The chamber filled with a thunderous voice speaking in an unknown language before switching to English. "Architect species recognized. Awaiting command protocol." Both aliens stared at Rivera in shock. The security drones, programmed to respond to specific threat parameters, hovered uncertainly. "Well," Rivera said with a grim smile, "that changes the negotiating positions, doesn't it?" Zalara took a step forward. "How is this possible? The key responds only to authorized Lumini genetic signatures." Morix's feathers rippled in agitation. "Unless unless humans are somehow connected to the key's creators. Rivera looked down at the artifact glowing in his hands, still uncertain which side deserved his trust. But one thing was now clear: he had leverage neither party had anticipated. "I think," he said slowly, "we all need to reconsider our assumptions about each other." The revelation that humans were somehow connected to the key's creators threw both alien factions into chaos. Within hours, representatives from the Vraxian High Council and Lumini Ascendancy had gathered in a hastily prepared conference chamber within the outpost. Rivera stood before the key, which now hovered in an open containment field, responding to his presence with a soft blue glow. Every command he issued unlocked new layers of information, historical archives that had remained dormant for millennia. As I suspected, Morix whispered, his feathered crest rising in excitement as he studied the data flowing across the holographic displays. The glyphs-match fragments we've discovered throughout this sector. Celara moved closer to Rivera, her skin shifting through patterns of blue that he was beginning to recognize as emotional indicators. How is this possible? Humans were unknown in this sector until recently. According to these archives, Rivera said, translating the scrolling data, we're not as young a species as we thought. He highlighted a specific section of the display. 20,000 years ago, humans achieved interstellar capabilities through technology fundamentally different from our current methods. The assembled aliens murmured as Rivera continued his explanation. They established outposts in multiple systems, including this one. But something happened, a catastrophic conflict or natural disaster, that collapsed their civilization. Earth regressed technologically, lost all knowledge of these earlier achievements. "And what of us?" asked the Lumini elder, her pale blue skin almost translucent with age. "What does it say of the Lumini?" Rivera navigated through more archives, then paused, his expression betraying surprise. "You were? Us." He expanded the display to show genetic sequencing data. Both Lumini and Vraxians evolved from genetically modified human colonists, adapted for different environments on the same planet. The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. Centuries of conflict between species who had believed themselves fundamentally different suddenly appeared in a new light. "These archives confirm that your ancestors weren't enemies," Rivera continued, his voice cutting through the chaos. "You were sister colonies established by the same expedition. Over thousands of years, genetic divergence and cultural isolation led you to forget your common origin." A Vraxian scientist pushed forward. "Impossible. Our biochemistry is entirely deliberately engineered." Rivera interrupted, highlighting specific genetic markers. "Your ancestors were modified to thrive in high radiation environments. The Lumini were adapted for aquatic and subterranean conditions. Both modifications were standard procedures for early colonization efforts. Using diplomatic tactics, honed during Earth's fractured history, Rivera leveraged this revelation to compel representatives from both sides to actually listen to each other. For perhaps the first time in generations, Lumini and Vraxians engaged in dialogue rather than posturing. The orbital platforms weren't designed as weapons, Rivera explained, translating more of the archives. They were terraforming tools, meant to stabilize this system's volatile star. Your ancestors repurposed them during their conflicts, not understanding the dangers. As the hours passed, a framework for cooperation emerged. The orbital platforms would be reprogrammed for their original purpose, the quarantine lifted with verification protocols, and a joint council established to govern shared technologies. Rivera was guiding final negotiations when the chamber's alarm systems suddenly blared to life. Holographic displays across the room switched to external feeds, showing a fleet of ships appearing in orbit. Lumini warships, Morix said, his voice tight with alarm. But our agreement? Zelara's skin had paled to a sickly white. Those aren't diplomatic vessels. Those are Commander Vex's battle cruisers. The room's communications array activated, projecting the image of a severe-looking Lumini male with ritual scarification across his face. Zelara, the figure said coldly. I see you've led us directly to the key. Well done. Commander Vex's warships appeared like predatory shadows in the sky, their weapons already charging. Holographic projections throughout the facility showed Lumini extremists storming outposts across the planet, overwhelming Vraxian security with surprising ease. We discovered how to bypass the genetic locks, Zelara whispered, her skin pale with horror. My reconnaissance data. They used it to plan this attack. Vex's voice echoed through the chamber. The key, Zelara. Now. Rivera studied the tactical displays, his military training automatically assessing the situation. The Vraxians were scrambling their defenses, but he could see they were outmatched. Their security forces, designed for research protection rather than full-scale combat, were falling back on all fronts. Zelar, Rivera said quietly, was this your plan all along? Her eyes met his, genuine anguish reflected in their depths. I was sent to find a way past their defenses, but Vex assured me we would only use the key as leverage for our freedom, not. Her voice faltered as the displays showed Lumini forces executing Vraxian civilians. Morix stepped forward, his usually calm demeanor replaced by urgent determination. The vault contains a quantum destabilizer. We can destroy the key before they reach us. And trigger a feedback cascade that would collapse half the continent, Zelara countered. The key's matrix is linked to the planetary defense grid. Rivera felt the weight of the artifact in his hands. The key pulsed with increasing intensity, offering access to the orbital weapons that could vaporize Vex's fleet in seconds. One command would end the attack, and potentially trigger an extinction-level war. The human stared at the tactical displays, dozens of possible scenarios running through his mind. None ended well. Even if he stopped Vex's forces, the underlying conflict would continue, now inflamed by fresh atrocities. There has to be another way, he muttered, more to himself than the others. His eyes fell on his emergency beacon, the last functioning piece of equipment from the horizon. A plan formed in his mind, elegant in its simplicity yet devastating in its personal cost. I need components from your communications array, Rivera told Morix, already moving toward a control panel, and access to your power distribution network. What are you planning? Zelara asked as Rivera worked, his hands moving with the practiced efficiency of someone trained for crisis response. Sometimes the strongest weapon is choosing not to use one, he replied, modifying his emergency beacon with Vraxian components. The hybrid device took shape quickly, its circuitry a marriage of human ingenuity and alien technology. This will generate a targeted electromagnetic pulse, he explained. It will erase the key's memory core and simultaneously disrupt the control systems of any vessel or weapon linked to its frequency. Zelara stared at him in shock. But your beacon, it's your only way to signal for rescue. I know. Rivera's voice was calm, his decision made. But better stranded than responsible for genocide. Vex's forces breached the outer perimeter. Security feeds showed Lumini troops advancing through the facility, overwhelming the remaining defenses. They've adapted their genetic signatures to match the key's recognition patterns, Morix said, studying the data streams. if they capture it. They won't. Rivera activated the device. A wave of invisible energy pulsed outward from the beacon. The key in his hands dimmed instantly, its intricate patterns fading to dull crystal. Throughout the facility, systems flickered and died. Outside, Vex's ships drifted powerless, their weapons suddenly inert. In the silence that followed, Rivera stood between the two species, a human who had sacrificed his only way home to prevent an atrocity. "What have you done?" Vex demanded as his forces burst into the chamber, their weapons failing to respond to commands. "Change the rules," Rivera replied simply. The diplomatic fallout of what became known as the Rivera Intervention transformed the system. 3 months after the confrontation in the vault, Rivera stood at the viewport of the Vraxian science vessel Conquerors, watching the blue-green curve of Proxima Centauri below. "Still considering our offer?" Morix asked, joining him at the viewport. The Vraxian's feathers had taken on the gold-tipped pattern that Rivera had learned signified respect. "To stay as permanent ambassador, it's tempting," Rivera admitted. "But Earth needs to know what's out here. They need to understand their own history." The aftermath of the confrontation had been chaotic, but ultimately productive. With the key disabled and Vex's forces neutralized, moderate Lumini, emboldened by Rivera's actions, had overthrown the Ascendancy leadership. The Vraxians, humbled by their technological arrogance, had opened their research to Lumini scholars. "The first joint council session went well," Rivera noted. "Never thought I'd see Lumini and Vraxian representatives sharing a chamber without trying to kill each other." "You showed us we were fighting our own cousins," Morix replied. "That realization changes perspectives." Rivera's quarters had become a nexus of cultural exchange. Both species brought in technical schematics, historical records, and cultural artifacts, partly out of scientific curiosity about humanity, partly out of genuine respect for the human who had sacrificed his way home to prevent a war. A chime sounded, announcing Zelara's arrival. Her position as liaison between the moderate Lumini faction and the Vraxians had been controversial, but ultimately accepted by both sides. "The chief engineer requests your presence," she said, her skin glowing with the soft blue patterns Rivera now recognized as excitement. They proceeded to a restricted section of the Vraxian research complex. The massive hangar doors parted to reveal a sleek vessel unlike anything Rivera had seen before. Its hull gleamed with a material that seemed to absorb and redirect light, making its contours difficult to focus on. "We've been studying the quantum drive from your vessel," the Vraxian chief engineer explained, leading Rivera toward the ship. "Combined with our understanding of dimensional physics and Lumini biocrystalline technology, we've created something revolutionary." Rivera circled the vessel in awe. It wasn't just a means for him to return home. It was faster, more efficient, and more powerful than anything in Earth's fleet. "We named it Pathfinder," the engineer said. "Your journey home will forge a path for our alliance to follow." Zelara approached, extending a small crystal on her palm. "The navigation matrix contains coordinates for Earth, drawn from your ship's databases. We've also included historical records from before the collapse of the ancient human civilization. Your mission," Morix added, "carries the weight of 3 civilizations now. Return to Earth as the herald of humanity's forgotten legacy and the ambassador of their first true interstellar alliance." As Rivera stepped aboard his new command, technicians made final preparations for departure. The ship's systems responded to his touch with an intuitive elegance that made the horizon seem primitive by comparison. He thought about the strange sequence of events that had brought him here. A damaged ship. An alien woman's offer. A journey that had revealed not just new worlds, but humanity's forgotten place among the stars. As the Pathfinder's engines hummed to life, Rivera smiled at the thought of his mission report to Earth authorities. It had begun with a simple offer of repair, and ended with repairing the broken history of 3 species. "Course set for Sol System," he announced. "Let's go home." The Pathfinder rose smoothly from the hangar, leaving the blue-green world behind. Ahead lay Earth, still unaware that its isolated children had just taken their first step back into a much larger family.